David Uosikkinen in the Pocket is sponsored by the School of Rock Main Line and Kroger Percussion. I'd like to thank the School of Rock Main Line, located at 511 Old Lancaster Road in Berwyn. You can visit their website at schoolofrock.com. Ask for Dave Marsh or Rick Allison. I'd like to thank Kroger Percussion at krogerpercussion.com at a /ITP, and it'll bring you to a website. You'll get a 5% discount. Call Eric Metz at 215-669-8588. That's krogerpercussion.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the David Uosikkinen in the Pocket podcast. And this is a bit of a solemn day. You know, this is kind of a, I woke up today and I was really happy to have our guest, who our guest is today, because he's a very, very good dude. And it's a tough time in America, and I hate to start a podcast off like that, but it's kind of one of those undeniable things that all of us have to face. And we wake up to this environment where young children are being killed in our schools, and it's a rough deal. And we all have families, and it's just a tough pill to swallow, to be honest with you. But we're going to push on, and we're going to talk today about a topic that I love and I participate in. We're all drummers. Of course, I got Freddie B with me here today, and we're excited about our guest today. He's a lefty, like Freddie.
Yeah.
Brilliant drummer. I met our friend Daniel Gless at, I guess it was a Delaware drum show some years ago, but I was familiar of his work from the Royal Crown Review, and he's a brilliant drummer, an amazing historian. I have a buddy that I grew up with, Bob Setlin, who is a music guy. He's a DJ, and he told me about Daniel's productions he was doing, going around the country talking about the history of drums and bebop and swing. And I know he's a fan of my drum teacher, Joe Casadas's. We've talked about that. We both tried to get in touch with Joe. I don't know how we were with that, but anyway, everybody, welcome Daniel Glass to the In the Pocket podcast.
Hey,
Morning.
good to be here. I'm happy. It's like it's a whole crew, man. You got a whole crew.
Oh yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. We have a good time. Jimmy does a fantastic job producing it and putting it together afterwards. But we just basically hang and I invite people on the podcast that I admire and I follow, and it's an opportunity to dig a little deeper into what you do. And we've when we do the drum show, a couple of times we've been next to each other. You're busy like signing autographs and talking drums with other people. And there's like usually I'm driving home.
The same.
Right. No. And I'm heading back going, I wish I asked Daniel this, and I wish we would have talked about this, and all these great things that he's into. And man, let me tell you, after the one thing that's pretty cool about this podcast is you get a little more research into whoever's going to be your guest. And I got some great music from you with your latest project. The BAM thing is like just off the hook, just Thank really you. Great. And, with our busy lives, we're being pulled here, there, and everywhere. Freddie understands that.
Yep.
So I got to focus in and read about what you were doing, about those other cats that you're playing with. And so here we are, So how's it going, man? So how's it going with everything? You're like waking up and you have a gig today? What's doing?
I don't have a gig today, but I have. This weekend is kind of nice. The next 2 weeks I'm going to be on the road. I'm going to upstate New York next weekend with Marilyn May, who's a amazing, maybe the greatest musician I've ever worked with. She's a 94-year-old singer.
Whoa.
And she is not well known to the general public, but she's kind of a legend in the world of like cabaret.
Yeah,
and
I know who Marilyn May is. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, absolutely.
She
That's
came.
amazing. You're working with her.
I've
I
been
saw a
working with
piece
her.
on CBS.
Yeah,
She did
CBS
this
Sunday morning.
did a great piece on Marilyn May,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it was Anthony Mason that did it, but there was just incredible. Uh, her history was unbelievable, and the fact that you're playing with her, man, that's unbelievable.
I feel very privileged because, as you
Yeah.
know, I'm very into the history and evolution
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
American music and the
Yeah.
instrument and all that. And so to have the opportunity to play with somebody like Marilyn, who, for example, Mel Lewis played drums on her first
Wow.
records on RCA. She's
Right.
worked with Buddy, the
Yeah.
Buddy Rich band.
Right.
She's worked
Yeah.
with the comedian Shecky Green.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She knew Ella Fitzgerald, like all these people. She holds the record for the number of times a singer appeared on the Carson Show, which is 76 times.
Wow.
She knew the songwriter Johnny Mercer. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
so somebody who has breathed the same air as these people that unfortunately I never had the chance to meet or see perform live.
Right.
For me, as somebody who's interested in that era, it's just the most amazing thing. And she's 94, and her knees are bad, but everything else about her is rock solid. And she sings her ass off. And I always tell people this, like, she's a chick singer. She is probably the most, like,
ballsy.
She knows what she wants.
Yeah.
I mean, she leads that band. But no, what I mean is she is a incredibly developed musician. She understands music. She understands the big picture of all of that stuff. And she puts together these incredible medleys and all kinds of stuff. So, and she sings her ass off. And sort of like the wily veteran, you can't like the athlete, you can't just hammer through. You gotta play smart, right? Rather than play physical. So she knows how to do all that. And she nails a crowd more than practically anybody that I know. And I've learned so much working with her.
I bet.
She wants a very strong rhythm, but she doesn't like cymbals, which is really interesting.
I love it. That's great.
And so, we do a lot of ballads and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. And the first time I worked with her, she said, no rivets. She hates rivet cymbals. And now imagine playing ballads all night, but not allowed to bring a rivet cymbal.
The fact that she even thinks like that says a lot. She's thinking production and
she hears overtones coming out of cymbals. She's fired excellent drummers because they wouldn't change out their cymbal, and the overtones just get in the way of where her voice sits.
Right.
You used to hear stories about guys like Joe Jones, Mel Lewis. They would talk about playing on a ride, and during the sax section, when the sax section was doing something, they'd play on this part of the ride so the overtones could deal with that. Because what we want is like those rides that are hammered, in a way that every ride is a little different. You get that killer ride. The problem is most people in the world today, and it's nobody's fault, but we come from more of a rock perspective where we're just hammering away on our drums. We're not thinking about these kind of really finite points. But when you work with somebody like Marilyn, it's always a piano trio. And the thing is, she always has to have a drummer. She will not do a gig with just the piano or piano bass. She got to have the trio, which has been great for me because I get to go places with her. Maybe somebody else wouldn't take me.
Wow.
She is listening to everything, every bit of the arrangement, every bit of the, what's happening. And she always tells me, and she loves me, but she always gives me shit. And she says, Daniel, the only reason I hire you is because you can play quietly.
That's a huge compliment.
You don't get in my way,
Yeah.
But it's a joke because obviously I got to fit in and make it be great.
Daniel, you're the guy, man. I mean, you said that you used the word playing smart earlier in your context of what we were talking about, but that's the deal right there. That's amazing. The understanding and knowing who you're working for. I mean, right away, I got a grin when you mentioned playing on the one part of the cymbal because, just having you in this group with Freddie and I mean, we're, especially in this part of the world, we're like wily veterans of this, getting in the studio, doing what we do. We had to rely on thinking about like, how's it going to work? We can't always rely on the physicality, because we're
Yeah.
getting a little older, Wow.
But
Wow.
but that's cool because there is absolutely an art form to that. I just saw on your Facebook you're playing with John Sebastian.
Well, I did a gig with John a while back, and really it was an odd thing because I was doing a show with I've played with Billy Burnett, and Billy is listen, Billy sang with Elvis Presley, and Billy's got a his history, just his family alone.
Well, the Burnett brothers,
right.
Rock and Roll Trio. I know all that stuff.
Right. So when we were playing up in Woodstock, Billy and John are friends, and he invited John to the show. And next thing you know, when John shows up, he shows up with an amplifier and a guitar. And then we're like, Kenny and I, and Kenny Aronson was playing bass. We're sitting there on stage.
Monster.
And and we mentioned, hey man, John might be coming. We should kind of maybe mess with some of these tunes. But he was another guy. We were playing softly, we weren't playing like full out, I mean, it was, I don't know, maybe somebody would probably say softly, really, but we were, really the dynamics was a big part of what we were going after with him. And he really appreciated that, working with somebody that, you get it when you work with artists that have that have been around them for a while. They don't want to be. Interesting enough, John and I had a conversation that night about in-ears. Because where was I? I just went to a show. Saturday night, I went to see Southside Johnny in Atlantic City, because my Tom Segusa, my buddy, plays drums with Southside. He invited me to the show, and I noticed that they didn't have. They all had monitors on stage, and I told him, I said, I'm amazed that you guys over all these years don't use in-ears, because that kind of changed things for me. I mean, I don't know about you. You probably, with Marilyn, you probably might not even have monitors. Do you have monitors with Marilyn?
We do, but the way I always try to set it up is, if possible, I want to be able to hear all the instruments without too much of the help of the monitor.
Okay.
Because what happens is, as soon as that happens, then my playing gets louder.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everything is loud.
Sure.
And then that gets in her way. So. It's just. But I hear you. One thing I wanted to point out: Count Basie. Okay, the Count Basie band did not use monitor wedges until 1980, and he died in 85. Okay, so from 1935 or 34, whenever he started, until 1980, they played to each other and they played to the room.
Yes, and they were great.
They were
great.
Yeah, we're talking 18 people.
Yeah.
No monitors.
Yeah.
I saw them.
They were great. That's an understanding of sound and tone and texture and awareness and whatever room you're in. And obviously every night it changes,
Yeah.
So Freddie Green, the guitar player for Count Basie, he never plugged in, ever. He never used an amp. He would put a mic finally in front. But for years and years,
wow,
his action was like 2 inches, off the neck.
Wow.
Turn his guitar almost sitting flat on his lap. If you look at him in the later years, he's sitting down. Well, he was sitting down the whole time, but he just, he took one recorded solo in 50 years with Basie.
Wow.
So it was about his instrument was the amp. The body of the guitar was the amp. The body of the bass was the amp. The body of the piano. Those things are designed to project, right? Of course, we think about that. It makes sense, but we're so in the world of amplification these days.
Right.
So he just chucked that thing, and it was a percussion instrument, and it created sound. So anyway, not to go too far down.
I love this topic. Perfect. Well, and I got to ask you, since you were talking about Count Basie, and Freddie, did you ever meet Butch Miles? Because I saw Butch Miles was playing drums.
Duffy was playing.
Duffy was with you. So
twice. My dad took me twice.
I saw Count Basie at my high school.
Oh wow!
It was high school in the gymnasium, and it was in 1971 or 2. and
Right.
Butch Miles was playing drums.
Wow.
And
Imagine-
I didn't even think about the fact that they were playing with no monitors.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and imagine how terrible the sound of a gymnasium is.
Right.
Oh.
Exactly.
Trying to play,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So
I've
I mean, but that I'll tell you my little like this is what I talk about when I talk about like what made these big bands so great, and especially the Count Basie rhythm section. So we'll go back even further to the original, you know, rhythm section, which they were called the All American Rhythm Section. That's how important they were, that they had their own name.
Wow.
Right.
The only other rhythm section I could think of that had its own name was Double Trouble with Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah,
you know?
Stevie.
Right.
Yes,
And the
right.
Swampers. The
Yeah.
Swampers.
The Swampers.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have some examples. We have some,
Right.
examples. But
Right.
there aren't many, right? There are
Right.
not many.
Right.
Right.
And so
Right.
anyway, the All American Rhythm Section, and I was thinking about it because I have a photo of a big band. I don't know which one from the era, but playing in these huge dance halls. You had Roseland Ballroom, you had the Steel Pier, you had the Savoy. Like those places could fit like 5,000, 7,000 people.
Jesus.
So my question is, how with no,
Yeah.
and then there was no PA. There was
Right.
no monitors, and
Right.
forget monitors. There was literally no PA for the band. There was
Right.
pre-amplification.
Yeah,
This was
yeah.
mid-30s.
Yeah.
So how?
Yeah.
How
Maybe
does
you
the
had
singer?
one mic for the
For
singer.
the singer.
Exactly.
Right.
But other than that, how does a rhythm section get 7,000 people to dance, many of whom are very far from the band, without blowing away the horns on the stage, so that it's still the level sounds right, and this is where these guys did this. So here's what I figured out. A couple years ago, well, it's now I think 2015, I did that Gene Krupa clinic, actually, the one I did in Delaware.
That was great.
Yeah,
I
it
did
was
the
awesome.
Chicago drum show, and DW, God bless them, built me a drum set, 26-inch bass, but it was
Wow.
only 14 deep.
Wow.
Because the bigger you go with diameter,
Wow.
the shallower it should be, so that you can still move the air in an appropriate way.
Gotcha.
Right.
So
Yep.
26 by 14, he used a 28 by 14. So DW was like, we got to be able to sell this drum set, so we're only building you a 26.
Yeah.
And then the toms and whatever. So I did the clinic, and I had been learning from guys like Louis Belson and other guys from that era about how to tune and how to muffle to really get the impact to be felt far away. A couple weeks after the clinic, I got an email from this guy. He said, I was at your show at Chicago, and I was sitting about 25 rows away from the stage. I was pretty far back.
Yeah.
And I could feel your bass drum.
Wow.
I could feel it,
Yeah.
So
Yes.
when you
Good.
think about that rhythm section, first you got the bass drum all the way underneath, and they were able
Right.
to set it up so that they were literally moving air, so that
Yeah.
it was a sound wave. It was a
Wow.
physical force.
Right.
Then you had the bass, right? Gut strings, so it wasn't a sharp sound.
Yeah.
It was thum thum thum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Muted sound. Then you have the guitar, then you have the piano, then you have the cymbals. And they were able to, since all of them are playing these quarter notes, you have a quarter note from the very bottom of the sound spectrum to the very top of the sound spectrum. Every frequency all being moved and
Yeah.
pushed out.
Yeah.
This is how they did it, man.
That's crazy.
This is how they did it. I know, it is crazy.
Yeah.
They were
Nuts.
able to get 7,000 people who were yelling,
Yeah.
dancing,
Yeah.
talking, clinking glasses, shuffling
Right.
their feet. The guy in the back of the room is feeling that rhythm section hitting him,
It's like disco before disco.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
same quarter note.
Exactly
that same
right,
concept.
man. I
Yeah.
mean, four to the floor, works
Right?
like a charm, which goes back to marching, right? You're getting
Yep.
people to walk down
Yeah.
the field. I mean,
Yep.
same thing. But the idea is you didn't obliterate them like you did with a marching drum section.
Right.
You
right.
hit them in this beautiful, subtle way. And this is what the All-American Rhythm Section perfected, that then every band after them copied, and is still really what jazz is based on, and then became what rock was based on, became
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that.
Oh, it was that
Yeah.
Sonny Payne who was in the rhythm.
Papa Joe Jones.
Oh,
Papa
he
Joe
was
Jones.
the original.
Yeah, we're
Wow.
talking Walter Page on
Right,
the bass,
right.
Papa Joe, Freddie Green, and Basie.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
that
Papa
was,
Joe was before Sonny
yeah.
Payne.
Yeah,
All right.
Sonny Payne was started with Basie in the 50s.
Oh,
and
okay.
Went
Wow.
along with him through the 60s into the early 70s.
Right.
He came and went.
Wow.
Which Miles, was playing with him in the late 60s and the 70s, and apparently, early 70s. Right. So I met Butch and interviewed him a few times, and he's a beautiful, beautiful guy.
I've seen some YouTube clips of him, and I think I went over and I said hello. I was maybe in 10th grade, and I remember he was just fantastic that night. I mean, just incredible. And I never really thought about the monitor thing, because I'm thinking, man, I remember sitting there with my dad, and he sounded amazing, and it's just remarkable. I mean, look, the sound thing fascinates me because, after all these years of playing, I'm still trying to figure it out myself, since I've been using ears for a long time.
Yeah.
And one thing that's happened with me, like I'm in a rock and roll band, and touring. Listen, Daniel, I'm playing about. The vocalists I work with, they want everything like almost like what happened on Thursday night. We want to feel it the same way on Friday night.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Consistent.
So about a good 85% of the show that I'm doing with the Hooters, I'm playing to a click. And what happens, I was watching a performance from Switzerland a few months ago, and I realized, as steady and cool as it was, I thought, oh, there were some things I missed. Like I missed a little bit of that.
Yeah.
Even though I've kind of feel like I'm very comfortable playing there, but I still feel like, man, as much as, and I get it, because they're my bosses, when on stage, when it comes down to it. And I want to be able to, please them. We're, play in the pocket. But I'm telling you, I'm hearing stuff right now that I'm going, man, I wish how much I almost want to put that thing away, because it's affecting the performance a little bit.
You know what's so interesting?
Sound-wise, I'm wrestling with that kind of thing, sound-wise lately, because I find myself, I don't think I'd be touring without these, because I've taken some hits, it's damaged some things, but I think that it compensates. Sometimes I'm losing the feel. It's just a bit of a challenge. I'm trying to figure it out. Even here I am in this point in my career, trying to figure it out. And I think, with you were talking about going out on the road with Marilyn and playing those live gigs, and it sounds, I'm jealous. It's like, wow. I mean, you pull it off. I know that's something I couldn't do.
It's fun, and it's challenging in its own way, because then for every room you're in, it's a totally different situation. You got to be able to find that thing, whatever the room is, whether it's a club or, different size spaces, whether it's, sometimes we do like in a tent somewhere or whatever.
Right. Outdoors. So, sure.
I mean,
you walk in a room, you're thinking that stuff. When you walk in to a venue, you're kind of like, your brain is like in gig mode from the moment you walk into that venue. It's not just, you know what I mean? You're thinking about, how's that sound going to be? You're a bit of a musical scientist, the way I look at it, you're trying to figure it out, It's remarkable.
What's cool, well, there's so many things I want to say in relation to all the things that you just said. I had an interesting experience in 1993. Steely Dan got back together and started touring again. Remember, this was a big event, Peter Erskine, and I was so excited. I was living in LA. I went and saw them at the Greek Theater. I was so excited. And I remember when they would play the earlier tunes, I was disappointed, because it was locked into a click, and it had a different feel. Like, okay, Reeling in the Years was now perfect.
Yeah.
It didn't feel the same. And it was Peter Erskine playing it, and it was sort of like you have this stallion that you've got to rein in.
Yeah.
And I just kind of felt like I was a little disappointed by that. For me, that wasn't what I wanted. Maybe that's what Donald Fagen wanted.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously.
I wanted the song to bound along. That's one of the things that's great about it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. But Also, I have to say one thing, not to move away from this, but you told me you saw Basie in your high school gymnasium, and I've told you this before, but I'll say it for the record on the podcast. Yeah. I saw you in my college gymnasium.
Yeah.
Really? I went to Brandeis University, and the Hooters played I think it would have been spring '85. It was my freshman year of college.
Oh my God!
And you guys played '85 because you were really happening at that time.
Yeah.
And
I hope it was a good show.
it was a great show, but it was in our gymnasium. So I saw you when I was a younger guy in our. So
Loud.
things go on. But I loved it. I didn't know who you were, but I do now, and
I was playing the yellow.
To tell you that
the yellow kid on the side. Oh, I never knew. Well, actually, if you told me, I didn't remember. But that's pretty cool. That's cool.
I love the band. I thought it was a great band.
Yeah. Well, I'm about to do 6 weeks on the road with them, starting in a few weeks. So it's somehow we keep on keeping that thing churning on. And I recorded something new with the band. I don't know if I told you about this, Freddie, but
you did
recorded
over
a track.
At Eric's?
And it's when the band started, we were more of a reggae ska thing, and we're kind of getting back. We're kind of done a full,
cool.
We're back, I guess, at 360, right? We're back to where we started, and we're kind of messing with those grooves, and so it's fun, like it's a lot of fun. Not that the other stuff isn't fun, but at this point where we're at, it was like, okay, let's do what we want to do, because we really don't need to please anybody. Hopefully our fans will like what we're doing, but
I tell you, I was drawn to is it All You Zombies? Is that one of your big that was the first hit of yours I heard. I was still in Hawaii. I was still a senior in high school.
Oh wow.
And that was a big hit on the radio there.
Yeah.
And I love the reggae feel, man. I was drawn to that on that particular tune. So
What island are you from?
I grew up in Honolulu. Which is on Oahu. Yeah.
Oahu.
You grew up there too, right?
From
awesome.
'81.
Wow. So how's your surfing chops?
Terrible.
Are they?
Because first of all, I'm very fair skinned, so I would get burned. I was out of school.
We're three of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrible. So, and as soon as I got into drums, great. I spent all my weekends in rehearsal spaces, darkened rooms.
Yep.
So you had to know early on in Hawaii, you're going to be leaving the island at some point. You knew, like when you were a teenager, you're probably like, I'm going to New York. Because I just assumed you were a New York guy. I mean, you play like a New York guy. And then and I became aware of you when I lived in the West Coast for 20 years. And I became aware of the Royal Crown Review through my guys. I played for a while with some of the guys from a band called the Mississippi Mud Sharks and Scotty Blinn, and they had a band called the Tiki Tortures. They were into everything was swinging, and with Freddie, we were doing a lot of, it was all swing stuff. And the stuff we were listening to was your band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I remember, and Brian Setzer, after he left the Stray Cats or was doing some other things.
I did 2 years in his big band.
Yeah.
I did a couple years in his big band, and I worked with all those people. So that was our
wow.
Yeah, and I lived in LA for 20 years. I only moved to New York 12 years ago. So
wow.
Yeah, in Hawaii, when you grow up in Hawaii, there's two pathways. And they're both really hard, different directions, and there's no other option. So you either stay and then you're there, and it's 5-hour flight to the nearest other part of the United States, and you're on an island, or you leave, and then you got to go a minimum 5-hour flight away. So it's a tough choice for kids growing up. But for me, it was not a tough choice, because I knew that probably my path in life was not going to be in Hawaii. I didn't know what it was going to be, but
right on.
So I went to Boston, to Brandeis University, which is about as far away from Hawaii as you can go, because I've been in the snow, and I wanted to go kind of like a cool area, although Brandeis is in Waltham. It's not exactly in Boston. I didn't realize till I got there, Thought I was going to be in the middle of Boston. Not quite.
Wow.
But anyway, I mean, I've sort of, it's funny you say I play like a New Yorker, because to me, I had a 20-year career in LA. We were signed to Warner Brothers. We did records with Ted Templeman, who did all the the
Oh yeah.
Van Halen records, the Doobies. I mean, he was in the music.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. We know about
We had
Chad.
this whole moment in the music industry, the old school music industry. But it wasn't until I moved to New York that I really finally felt like I was home. I feel like this is where I belong. This is where,
Yeah, felt right.
Right on.
where all my skill sets are really appreciated and working for me. And I work a lot out here, and I love it. I love the history. I love the vibe. I love the tradition. I love the struggle. You know, it's just like, to me, that's that to me personally, that's what being a musician is all about. I love the small rooms and playing mezzo piano and below and really making an art form out of that. And you know, until like, people get it when they come to my gig. I play every Monday at Birdland, the jazz club.
Nice.
I gotta get it. I gotta get out there to see you.
You gotta come up, man.
Well, we haven't been in New York. The pandemic has kept us out of New York, but we're taking a trip next week up to Pittsburgh to see some things that we've never seen and hang out there. But New York is always someplace we always come and stay.
Make sure you
we're
stay
gonna
through.
Come out. We will.
Stay through on a Monday. I'll put you on the guest list.
Wow, love that.
It's really kind of a New York experience. Broadway cabaret jazz. We played, you know, everything on that night. It's swinging. I'm working on my dang, dang, dang. You know,
I love that you're saying you're working, Daniel. Listen,
that's what I'm not my life pursuit. My life pursuit.
But listen, just for people that are watching the podcast, I mean, I'm not going to read this, but you sent me some info. But you've played with Bette Midler, Liza Minnelli, Brian Setzer, Harry Connick Jr., Freddie Cole, Ruben Blades, Jason Rosales, Kathleen Turner, Lucy Arnaz, and what got me is the Gene Simmons things that you did. Yeah. I mean, you've really had, your career is remarkable. I mean, it's not only the playing, but you know how you, and which is incredible. And you're all the great artists that you work with, but the thing that you do is educating people and talking like you're talking to us. You know, I just feel like I'm learning something when I talk to you, and you've been giving back to the drum community and musicians your entire life, man. As long when you after you had some success, it was like, hey, I'm teaching. I'm gonna, and you know what I mean. And it's been amazing. I commend you on it. And I think it's really remarkable, and it's such a great thing that you do. You put a whole your presentation is remarkable.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Well, what's interesting is what really got me into it. I mean, when I moved to Los Angeles in 1991, I wanted to be Vinnie Colaiuta. You know what I mean? Like everybody else that moved to Los Angeles in 1991. I wasn't thinking about history. I didn't know. I didn't care about it. I didn't have any. But my involvement with the band Royal Crown Review, you know, which for people that don't know now, because it's now a long time ago, but
go look them up.
Was the band that was sort of responsible for the big swing resurgence that happened in the 90s.
Yeah, it was great, and it's still great.
Yeah, and it was a great band. It's like a little big band. We had 3 horns, and we sort of, you know, the band. Those guys were really. It was more than just a musical style. It was.
Hey, you even got on MTV, right?
TV, yeah, we did.
I mean, you made videos. I mean, it was a big movement.
It was a huge worldwide movement, and I had a very wonderful 20-year career as a result of that. The band was around before the trend, and then after the trend, we were around. And in the early 2000s, we spent a lot of time. The first decade of the 2000s, we went to Australia. We had a huge career there for about 15 trips down there, and different, you know, Europe and all that stuff. So all that was great. But one thing, you know, that band was really committed on every level. So we were students of history, and we were, you know, back before the internet took over everything. You could go to Goodwill and find amazing, cool suits and tie bars and vintage ties and clothes and instruments. You know, that's where I got into collecting vintage drums, because all the guys in the band used vintage gear, and you know, pulp novels, and some of the guys drove these beautiful vintage cars. I mean, they were really committed, and there was a whole scene around that.
No, I remember that well. For me,
the best part about all that was meeting the older guys that had actually made the music that we were, you know, if not covering, we were inspired by.
They'd come out to gigs. They'd come out.
And I started meeting these guys, you know, and somebody said, oh yeah, the guy who played with, you know, say, you know, Benny Goodman is here. The guy who played with Glenn Miller is here.
Right.
I started meeting these incredible old guys. And what I realized is that they all had these amazing stories to tell, and nobody was paying any attention or cared.
Yeah, that's such a shame.
To me, like, what I realized is that there was this amazing story to tell about the drums and the drum set and the evolution of our instrument.
Yeah.
Nobody knew it. Nobody in the drumming community really knew anything about. Maybe you had historians who knew names and, you know, this guy played with this band from this time to this time, but nobody was like, how did they get that sound? How did they use this finish here? You know, it was like, I would ask people, not what was it like to play with Elvis. I mean, I interviewed all of Elvis's drummers.
DJ Fontana.
DJ Fontana.
Yeah.
I also got to know Ron Tutt, you know, who was
Nice.
70s.
Wow.
And I also got to know Buddy Harmon, who became one of my dear friends.
Monster.
Nobody knows this, but Buddy played on every one of Elvis's 33 movie soundtracks. All of them. He would fly
that
out
makes sense.
to LA from Nashville because he was a trusted, because, you know, Elvis was in Memphis and Nashville. Yeah. Also, DJ Fontana played on a lot of those things.
Wow.
So DJ wasn't as trained as Buddy.
Nope.
Right? Buddy was kind of the ringer, but DJ would play. Then they would bring in guys like Hal Blaine, the LA guys in the 60s, and some of these other legendary figures who were there.
Earl
and
Palmer.
they would. You'd have 2 and 3 drummers, and they'd be playing percussion and whatever else. But it was still like all in the family. It was still like all this, all in the family thing.
Yeah.
So I got to know, Buddy. So I covered like every aspect of Elvis's career through meeting these guys, and that became. I then wanted to kind of tell their stories.
Right on.
And that's really what inspired me to start putting these books and DVDs together. And
brilliant.
Trying to show people.
Where can people get, like, where can people, online, obviously at your website, but this stuff is fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
if somebody
if they go to
wanted
my
to
website, if they go to my website, they can at least see what I've got. And you can order it from my website or
Amazon,
or say if you're in the UK, it's gonna be cheaper to get it from Amazon in the UK and have me ship it. Super expensive. But in any case, so I have 3 DVDs and 5 books.
Yeah.
And
Hey, we're zipping away, and I just want to play a little bit of music because this is Daniel, we're gonna have to do like a whole series of podcasts with you.
Yeah, really.
Because there's so much great stuff, and just on every level. Okay, hey, Jim, do we have Hey Poncho? I want to play a little bit of a Crown Review for people to hear.
Hey,
do we have that, Cuda? Yeah. Pachuco, I'm sorry.
Pachuco, yeah. There it is.
Yeah, there we go.
Summer 43, the man's gunning for me. Blue and white, me war tonight. See, damn my pride and all the cats have been down east side. Tonight there's no place to hide. So I can't. No shame. Tonight, I die for our name. Woo! Well, when we hit downtown, we start to throw down. We end up doing time. Soon as we met up there, so stick with that gang of mine. 'Cause 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 'cause
Wow. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bravo, man. Hey,
Yeah.
usually most times we start talking through the track. That was brilliant.
Yeah, it was great.
Get your heart racing. Man, that must be fun to play too.
Now, I have a question. Is that one of the records that Ted Templeman? So he's originally a drummer, right?
Oh, yeah.
What was that like?
Working with Ted was amazing, and actually, he recently released an autobiography a couple years ago that is super great and worth reading.
Wow.
His
Okay.
story
All
is
right.
an incredible story because he grew up in the hills of Santa Cruz, California, and then he was actually in a band that he was originally the drummer for, and then he was the lead singer called Harper's Bazaar.
Yes, I remember that.
And they did this really weird chipmunk version of Feeling Groovy. They sped up all his vocals and everything. And so, but through that experience, that band was signed to Warner Brothers, and he became friends with Lenny Waronker and was mentored by Lenny, and then went on to become one of the greatest producers ever.
Of course.
It's his story of just all the artists he worked for and the record business at that time. Can you imagine?
They were building it. It's if you look at the history,
Warner Brothers in 72 or 3.
Right.
I mean,
amazing.
It must have been so incredible.
Little Feat.
Yeah.
He worked with Little Feat as
Little
well.
Feat.
Yep.
Van Morrison.
Yep.
The Doobies.
Yep.
And then, he did
Incredible.
Aerosmith stuff, and he was responsible for so much stuff that that we don't even really, know about. When you read this, you realize. And his influences. So what was really cool was like we had been seen by Quincy Jones, we had been seen by Richard Perry, like all these really, because our band had the buzz, the whole thing was happening locally.
Yeah. Right.
And a lot of people came and saw the band, and everybody passed because they didn't know what to do with us. Ted knew immediately what to do with us.
Yeah.
Because he understood jazz, and he understood that we were young guys trying to...
And that was a great label for you. I thought Warner's just a great label.
It was great.
Nice.
So, unfortunately, shortly thereafter, the whole bottom fell out of the business. It happened so fast. And, he was part of a triumvirate of guys at Warner Brothers. Mo Austin, Lenny Waronker. Lenny Waronker was the magic producer, and Ted sort of was number 3.
They were the guys.
Those 3 guys, they really, that was when we joined the label. Warner had WEA was Warner Electric Atlantic,
right,
25% share of the market. It was incredible.
Yeah. Massive.
And within months of us getting signed, Mo and Lenny both left.
Yeah.
And then they started bringing in
Edgar Bronfman. Was it Bronfman? Edgar Bronfman, somebody that came in there for a little while.
Yeah, no, well, they brought in this guy, Doug Morris.
Oh, right. Yeah.
These guys just, Danny Goldberg was the first guy to come. And Danny Goldberg wasn't even a producer. He had been a publicist at Zeppelin. And he came in to see us. We played live in the studio as we were making that record, which is called Mugsy's Move. We played like 6 songs in the studio for this guy, Danny Goldberg. Now, you were just saying like, oh, that makes you go, makes you move.
Right.
They're like this.
Yeah.
That was his reaction.
Didn't get it.
No response, no movement. And all he said at the end was, it's not really something that's going to get on the radio, is it? He missed the whole thing. Like he was so clueless.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, we led the way. We went out and did the tours in the RV of the super crappy clubs all over America, opening this up. And then all the rest of those bands that had million-selling records that had support from their labels that ended up playing the Super Bowl and were in all these movies and everything, they all followed and they got the credit. And we're sort of this kind of forgotten
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Where everybody says,
Yeah.
"Oh, they were the pioneers," but
Yeah.
everybody knows that song, "Hey Pachuco," but
Yeah.
nobody knows there's a band
Yeah.
behind it.
Yeah.
You know? So
Right.
My buddy Brad Johnson was one of the he was the manager of the Guitar Center in Hollywood, I believe. Was a massive fan of Royal Crown Review. He was a bass player. He had an upright bass. He played with a band. I forget the name of the band, but he loved you guys, and he knew some of the guys in the band. But he would tell me about your band, and it's just remarkable. I got to ask you, because we're running short on time. I got to ask you about this Gene Simmons thing. Tell me about that. Tell me about
well,
that.
we, being in LA, you lived in LA,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
all kinds of weird stuff happens, and who
Yeah.
knows what might happen and what's going on. But I joined the band in '94. We got signed in '95, and by '96 we were touring pretty hard.
Right.
And in '96, Kiss got back together and put the makeup back on. The original
Right.
guys came back together, and it was the biggest tour in the world.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that we were on the same tour trajectory that they were on. So we were hitting, this city and then the next city and the next city, and they were there, as well. So I remember one night we're driving, and literally like 15, we were in an RV, right, at this point. We were on Warner Brothers. We had no tour support. We made our
Yeah.
own money. They didn't
Yeah.
even believe in us.
You probably did better off that way, though, because
No,
at
you're
the end
probably
they
right. You didn't know them.
basically,
Yeah.
Because
you know,
we were able, amazingly at those times, we could
Yeah.
play medium-sized clubs and finance our own tour and make
Right.
money
Make
Yeah.
money.
through merch sales and through all the shows were sold out.
Right.
right.
So, that was cool. And our overhead was low because we had it was like 8 of us,
Yeah.
7 band members, and a crew guy in an
Yeah.
RV meant for 5.
Wow.
So you get the picture.
Yeah.
But anyway, so one night we're driving and like 15 tour buses just hauled past us. And that was Kiss's tour, like the biggest
Yeah.
tour. So we had this crazy thing. We played in Denver. And of course, we're playing in clubs. We played the Bluebird Theater. Which is
Bluebird.
lovely.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so our show didn't start till like 10:30, 11.
Yeah.
And their show was over already at the Denver Enormo Dome. So their management, it was the same promoter. So they gave the management tickets to come see us.
Yeah.
And then we, in turn, Kiss had a second night and we stayed in Denver. They got us front row tickets to see this tour. Our whole band, front row center.
Wow.
Wow.
It was
Wow.
mind blowing. So we kept ping ponging with Kiss as we did this tour, and nobody knows this, but they did not. Kiss was first of all, they didn't want to carry an opener with them. So everywhere they went, they had regional openers, or they had a band that would do, because all these bands were getting booed off stage because
Of course.
Yeah,
the
sure.
biggest tour, nobody wanted to
Right.
see anybody but Kiss. They had 311
Right.
got booed, and the Deftones, all these bands. So meanwhile, we're on a 2-month tour, brutal tour of the whole country. You know those, Dave, right?
Yeah. Done 'em.
So
So's
we're-
Fred. Fred's
Yeah.
done 'em.
So we're now in Florida, okay? And we get a call. Kiss has an opening in Omaha, Nebraska. The opening
Oh.
band dropped out. Do you want to do it?
Wow.
So we shovel everything around. We drive from frickin' Florida
Oh
over
my
to Omaha, like
goodness.
a day and a half. And we opened 2 shows for Kiss at the Omaha Hockey Arena.
Yeah.
I kid you not.
I know
Wow.
it.
And what was so crazy is that Nebraska was the only state left that had festival seating shows. So we were the opener. When we went on, the whole place was full because
Wow.
everybody was waiting all day to get in. So we played to 2 nights opening for Kiss, and we got to see the tour again. So through that, we got to know Gene a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And-
And he loved you guys, right?
Yeah, he dug us because Gene and Paul, they grew up on the Beatles. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody knows that they were, but also they loved rhythm and blues, Jackie Wilson, that kind of stuff. So flash forward now another bunch of years, and I think this is 2005, I want to say. Gene Simmons is doing his reality show. And his reality show, Family Jewels.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
one of the little conceits, because of course the show has nothing to do with reality, but it's all planned out. So one of the conceits is that Gene is going to explore his roots
Yeah.
as a R&B rockabilly blues guy, and
Yeah.
he's been supposedly hired to do a show in Vegas.
Ah.
So he grabs the Royal Crown Review to be his backup band.
Ah.
And it was so great because he was working with him was great. I learned a lot. The guy is
Smart.
an amazing businessman.
Of course.
Yeah.
And he was actually very cool and respectful
Yeah.
of us. I had heard stories about how he wasn't
Yeah.
so nice to people, but to us,
Yeah.
he was a perfect gentleman.
Yeah.
And he took us into A&M Studios, where the same room that they did We Are the World, because the idea was we were going to play at this live show in Vegas. But he said he had done enough of these that he knew that on TV it doesn't sound as big as you want it to sound.
Right.
So we
Yep,
pre-recorded all the tunes that we were going to play with him, and then when we went to Vegas and did this, thing, it was his audition for his big Vegas, thing that was going to happen.
Yeah.
We played along with our own track so that they could mix the two on TV, so it sounded
Nice.
good, and then Gene's vocals were
Yep.
live. That was the idea.
That
So-
makes sense.
We got to hang with him. We got to go to his home office, which is like this
Yeah. Massive.
ceiling Kiss memorabilia, 10 feet
Right.
high in
Yeah.
every direction. It was really cool. All
Oh.
that was filmed, and we did a 3-episode arc on the
Wow.
show.
Wow.
Included in us performing with Gene at the Hard Rock in Vegas and doing these tunes.
Wow. Wow.
So cool.
It was a great
Fun.
experience.
And
I
that's
really loved
amazing.
the guy.
and,
That's
and,
great.
A, and a great time. Hey, we're running. We're coming close to the end, but you're gonna promise me you're gonna come back. I gotta
Yeah,
play.
man.
We gotta play a little bit of Smoke on the Water.
Yeah.
Gotta
So
play
let me-
some of this.
Can I
Gotta-
set it up?
Yeah. Set it up. Set it up.
So I'll try to keep it short.
No, go ahead. All good.
I led bands. I was kind of one of the main business guys in Royal Crown Review, and I led bands in LA, my own trios and quartets.
Right.
And when I moved to New York 12 years ago, I was like, I'm going to put all that down because I was pursuing my work as an educator. And so I was like, in New York, I'm just going to be a sideman. And I've slowly developed that. So I have a really thriving career as a sideman now in
Doing
New York.
great.
Nice.
And the education thing is going. But I always felt like I wanted to, when you're a sideman all the time, you really don't have any say about anything. You're paid, you have no responsibility. You come, you do the gig great, you go. You get your money. I wanted to have my own project where I could kind of
I get it.
charge. So I
Right
do
on.
jazz intensives, and I should say I have a jazz intensive coming up in Europe, the Daniel Glass European Jazz Intensive. I did 4
Nice.
years in New York City, and last year a guy with a school in Europe said, you got to come out. So if people go to my website, they can look up the Daniel Glass 2022 European Jazz Intensive. It's amazing. I bring my jazz
Where in
trio.
Europe? Where do you do this in Europe? Is
It's
this
just
all-
south of Frankfurt in a
Oh,
little
okay.
town called
Okay.
Osthofen at this incredible
What
drum
town?
school.
What is the town?
It's called Osthofen.
Okay.
And if people go to my website, just go look under clinics and intensives, and they can find all the information there.
Outstanding.
But I bring my trio from New York, so we bring New York out there. We set up at this music school, and we do concerts there's a jazz society there, and then the guy has a swing band. The guy who owns the school, he's a huge RCR Royal Crown Review fan. So
Wow.
I sit in
Perfect.
and do a 2-drummer thing with his swing band. So they get the
Sweet.
concerts, we
Yeah.
teach all day, and then every day the drummers sit in with my group.
Wow.
Nice.
We-
Awesome.
Give them a lot of feedback that way.
That's
So
awesome.
I had this group. We've been doing these jazz intensives first in New York and then in Europe. And we were developing a repertoire, and we would play some gigs just out. If I got a call for a casual, like a club date or a private that needed a trio, I'd bring these guys in. So I finally, during the pandemic, 2020, I said, let's record an album. And I didn't know what was going to happen. I just, we had some repertoire. We recorded an album, and through crazy circumstances, I got hooked up with a great little label in December of last year. So a year and a half goes by, and I have this fully completed mixed album done. And so now we released the album. We just did it. We sold out Birdland, which was really exciting.
Nice.
April 28th, we officially released.
Awesome.
So it's the Daniel Glass Trio, and the record
Yeah.
is called Bam.
Bam. Oh, we didn't even. I feel bad. We didn't even get a chance to talk about that. But
Yeah.
listen,
But
I
one of
love
the
you. I
things-
love you to come back. But I'm going to hear.
Yeah, all of us are fans of.
Yeah.
We all grew up playing rock. That was
Yeah.
one thing like. Ian Pace is my first drum hero. I try to bring
Yeah.
Ian Pace.
I mean, I
Another
see. I
lefty.
hang with Ian every summer. I'm doing a couple shows with Deep Purple.
Oh
this
my
summer,
God.
I'll see him.
So good.
I'm jealous. I've met him a couple times, but I've never really got the chance
Oh,
to meet with him.
when he sits behind you, when you're playing, like I was doing a sound check one day, he came out and I'd look over and go, it's Ian Pace.
Yeah.
I better play well now.
Oh, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
I try to, you know, what I love is that Ian Pace grew up playing jazz in his
Yeah.
father's big band.
yeah.
He brought that vibe to Deep Purple. And
Yeah.
I try to take that vibe
Yeah.
that inspired me and
Yeah.
to kind of bring that to the swing stuff that I do, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, we just happen to be jamming on Smoke on the Water. We came up with this cool arrangement,
It's
and
great.
I really think it's cool. So this is the jazz, like the real
Yeah.
throwing down the series jazz.
Hit it.
All we do is cover Smoke on the Water.
Hit it, Jim.
Okay, now he's showing pictures of Royal Crown Review.
Yeah.
Before he showed the trio. There you go.
There you go.
This is great. Wow. Wow. It's
Ah,
I have to say this guitar player is monstrous.
monstrous.
it sounds beautiful.
Wow.
Got a real kind of a John Schofield kind of an approach.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
totally great. Hey, so our listeners out there, check out, go to Daniel Class. Daniel, that's your website, danielclass.com. Is there
Yes.
anything? Danielclass.com, and you can get all your info on Daniel and what he's doing. Bam, the Daniel Class Trio, it's killer. He's got a great, all the stuff, the educational stuff you're doing. It's just really great stuff. And Daniel,
Yeah, man.
thank you for an uplifting podcast after starting the way we did and talking to you about drumming and all this stuff. It's good stuff, and hopefully we'll catch up real soon. And Freddie,
Peace out.
thanks
Yeah,
again.
man. My pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
man.
you guys. Thank you guys
Hey,
for having
yeah,
me. It's been a ball.
great.
It really has.
Yeah,
we
man.
need to hang, man.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Listen, I'm gonna reach out to you when we come up to New York because we want to come to
Please.
Birdland and see you. Okay?
Come up. And I also, everybody out there, every Monday at Birdland, it's one of the greatest jazz clubs in the world, and I'm
Yes.
honored to play there every week. And the show on Monday is super fun. It's entertaining. It's not what you would expect from a jazz club, but it swings and is jazzy, and we play bop, everything under the sun. So come to Birdland on a Monday. You'll have a great time, and come say hello.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, man. Great podcast. I want to thank our sponsors, the School of Rock on Main Line, Kroger Percussion, and we'll catch you next time on In the Pocket.